Welcome to Highway Herald, your roadmap to the latest in auto. Not too long ago, the buzz was all about the burgeoning EV market in China, with countless new players, innovative technologies, and grand ambitions to dominate the global stage. Fast forward to today, and the landscape is starkly different. The market is flooded, capital is scarce, and an intense price war has further muddied the waters. Join us as we delve into why Chinese EV manufacturers are hitting the skids, leaving behind vast EV wastelands. Reason number 5, China's EV wastelands. China's cities are now home to so-called EV graveyards, filled with hundreds, if not thousands, of abandoned electric vehicles. Intriguingly, all these vehicles bear license plates, indicating they were once purchased and registered. The mystery of their abandonment has led many to suspect a scheme, as most of these EVs were bought by car-sharing companies. This situation traces back to 2 decades ago, when the Chinese government invested heavily in new energy vehicles, including hybrids, plug-in hybrids, EVs, and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. As the 21st century's first decade ended, it became clear that EVs were the key to competing with Western car makers, leading to increased government funding for startups. This resulted in a surge to 500 EV makers. However, this growth was unsustainable, especially when the government began imposing stricter conditions for incentives, including sales volume targets. These conditions led small startups, desperate for subsidies, to devise new ways to secure them. Many believe these companies sold EVs primarily to secure incentives, with car-sharing companies having no real intention of regular use. While some argue this was a scheme to gain government subsidies, others suggest that these graveyards are filled with older, first-generation EVs that couldn't compete technologically or qualitatively. They see this as a natural process, where most startups either go bankrupt or are acquired by larger entities. Before we dive into reason number 4, please consider subscribing to Highway Herald. Your support fuels our passion to create more content like this. Now let's shift gears to reason number 4, the vanishing act of 90% of EV companies. China's ambition to lead the global EV technology race sparked a flurry of opportunities for startups. By 2018, the number of EV manufacturers had skyrocketed to 500. However, it soon became apparent that even China's colossal economy couldn't sustain them all unless they sold a significant number of EVs. Most managed to acquire technologies and set up production facilities, but when it came time to mass-produce vehicles, they found themselves cash-strapped. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing economic crisis. It was evident that the market couldn't accommodate all these companies. Reports from last year indicate a significant drop in the number of EV manufacturers. Officially, it's under 100, but experts speculate that the actual number of active EV producers and sellers is much smaller, and many more are likely to cease operations soon. Survival requires fresh capital, and to attract fresh capital, you need sales. The issue is that most of these companies never achieved substantial sales volumes. Many remained at a quarterly level of 500 units, hardly a figure that would entice new investors. Hence, it's plausible that only about 50 out of the initial 500 companies are still operational. Essentially, 90% of the companies no longer exist, and it's only a matter of time before they officially declare bankruptcy. Reason number 3, the recent bankruptcy wave. The recent wave of bankruptcies among Chinese electric vehicle companies is a stark indicator of the sector's turmoil. Over the past few months, 5 such companies, some previously seen as promising, have declared bankruptcy. The issue lies in the market's limited capacity. A look at the Chinese car market and EV sales reveals that the top 10 EV manufacturers account for 80% of total sales, leaving only 20% for the rest. This data is hardly surprising. Research suggests that a third of active EV makers sell more than 2,000 vehicles annually, leading to the assumption that many will eventually cease operations. Experts predict at least 20 more bankruptcies this year. Among the bankrupt companies are notable names like Enlightening, once considered a Tesla competitor in sales. Neutron and Evergrande New Energy Auto, part of a conglomerate that invested billions in EVs, also declared bankruptcy. Despite substantial investments, Evergrande failed to achieve significant sales, resulting in a loss of $17 million per EV sold. Lastly, WM, a well-capitalized startup with significant technological achievements, recently declared bankruptcy. Despite its potential, WM couldn't compete in the price war and cover its losses. It's currently undergoing massive restructuring and seeking new investors, but the outlook remains bleak. Reason number 2, even the giants are stumbling. In the face of an ongoing price war and the cutthroat competition of the Chinese EV market, it's no surprise that small startups are falling by the wayside. What is surprising, however, is that even the industry's big players are struggling to keep pace. Among the top 10 manufacturers, the struggle is real, as turning a profit on EVs, even with high-volume sales, is no easy feat. In fact, BYD is the only Chinese car maker currently making money on EVs. Furthermore, BYD and Tesla are the only two companies worldwide that are profitable in the EV sector. Other major Chinese car makers are grappling to break into the EV economy, despite generous government incentives and low labor costs. They're all bleeding money, including companies like NIO. Despite establishing impressive production facilities and employing over 11,000 people, NIO's sales are far from impressive. With only 8,000 units sold last year and a loss of around $35,000 on each one, it's no wonder that companies like NIO are seeking financial injections globally, including a deal with Abu Dhabi for a 7% stake. Other major players, including Chinese legacy car companies, are also wrestling with the EV economy. Their saving grace is their ability to compete internationally in various markets, which brings us to the number one reason why so many Chinese companies are failing. Reason number one, the limitations of the domestic market. Perhaps the primary reason why so many EV manufacturers have declared bankruptcy is the limitations of the Chinese domestic market. While China is a vast market, it's not exactly teeming with affluent households. Consequently, most Chinese people can't afford expensive cars, forcing companies to focus on small and cheap EVs. The problem is that, even if profitable, the margins in this vehicle class are minimal, meaning that only a few car makers will survive the ongoing price war. Most others will either declare bankruptcy or be acquired by larger players. As mentioned, BYD and Tesla are probably the only EV companies that can count on EV profit. In addition to them, there are a few more legacy car makers that can survive, primarily because they don't rely solely on the domestic market. Companies like Geely or MG, with a strong presence in various international markets, have been selling cars globally for years and have established themselves as affordable alternatives to Western car makers. In these markets, they can offer competitive prices for both electric and traditional internal combustion-powered models, offsetting the losses they are and will continue to incur domestically. So what we're witnessing now is a complete transformation of the Chinese EV market landscape. The era of diversity has ended. New technologies have been acquired, and now it's time for the big players to reap the benefits. In other words, the number of Chinese EV companies will continue to dwindle, and probably won't stop until only a few major players remain. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to subscribe to Highway Herald to stay updated on the latest vehicle updates and upcoming videos. See you next time.